Hello students, hope you all are fine. Today we are going to see the second chapter of chemistry, that is solutions. This chapter is divided into two parts. First we are going to see solutions and we are also going to see four colligative properties. All four colligative properties are very important. Just for you all to have a feel of this lesson, I'll give you a short introduction of this. Let's go. Solutions. The major part of solutions is called as solvent, whereas the minor part is called as solute. You take any example. Let's take an example of sugar in water. In this case, sugar is solute, whereas water is solvent. What actually solution is, it is a homogeneous mixture of two components or more components. It is a uniform mixture. So solution always consists of solvent and solute. Remember this, a solution consists of solvent, which is a major part, and solute, which is the minor part of the solution. Now according to this, we have 9 types of solutions, and these all types are very important. Remember, if you are preparing for entrance exams or any other exams, you require this knowledge because most of the MCQ questions are asked on this. So let's see, according to the state of solute and state of solvent, we have certain 9 type of solutions. For example, let's go ahead. First case, solid, the solute is solid and solvent is liquid. Now, for you all to understand, I'll just simplify and tell you that solid is present inside the liquid. That is, liquid is base or liquid is more and solid is present in smaller proportion. The best example is seawater. As seawater contains salts, so let's take example seawater. The next example is solid in solid. That is, two solids are mixed together. So example is metal alloys. So you all know, when two metals combine in proper proportion, it is called as an alloy. You can also say that alloys are solutions. So this is again one example. The next is solid in gas. That is, gas is present in larger proportion and solid is present in smaller proportion. Iodine in air. We have already seen in 11th standard, that is iodine sublimates, and so iodine present in air is an example of solid present in gas. The fourth example is liquid in liquid, that is ethanol in water, alcohol in water. Two liquids coming together, both are in liquid state, the solute as well as solvent, both are in liquid state, and this example is ethanol in water and it is miscible. Now next is liquid in solid. Now again I'll stress liquid in solid. Now in this case, amalgams of mercury. I'll wait here and tell you what are amalgams. Always remember, mercury is present in liquid state. Mercury, though it is a metal, it is present in liquid state, and when mercury combines with any other metal, it is called as amalgam. The process is called as amalgamation and the compound is called amalgam. So liquid in solid, the best example is amalgams of mercury. Next is liquid in gas. That is, gas is present in larger proportion and liquid is present in very smaller proportion. So chloroform in nitrogen. Another example you can also see in day-to-day life is water vapor present in air. This can also be an example. Next is gas in liquid. Carbonated water, soda water, Coca-Cola or any other fizzy drinks, we can say that gas is present in liquid. Next is gas on solid, that is H2 gas in palladium. This H2 in palladium you must have seen in paper 2 for addition reactions. When we have to add hydrogen, we usually use this as a catalyst. So H2 in palladium, that is gas in solid. And the very common example, last 9th, that is gas in gas, which is nothing but air. So this is what we have seen, the 9 examples. Please go through it. It is there in your textbook. So these all 9 examples are very important. You can also add your own examples to it. Now let's go ahead to what actually capacity of solution is. Let's go ahead to the next slide. Now here we are going to see capacity of solution to dissolve solute. This is an important topic. Pay attention properly. I'll repeat again. Capacity of solution to dissolve solute. You all know that solute gets dissolved in solvent. Now what actually it should be, we are going to see what actually dissolution is or what is solution formation. Now first we are going to see a saturated solution. So what is a saturated solution? When large amount of solute is present in a solvent. For example, if we add sugar in water, we add 1 spoon, again it gets dissolved, then again we add 1 more spoonful of sugar. So accordingly, a stage will come when no more further dissolution will take place. And this is called a saturated solution. So what is saturated solution? No further addition of solute is possible. So this is called a saturated solution. Actually, what solution formation is? Solute plus solvent. If you see above the arrow, that is called as dissolution. Dissolution will lead to the formation of solution. And just the reverse, if you see the reverse arrow, the forward arrow and the reverse arrow. If we see the reverse arrow, that is solution on crystallization will give you solute as well as solvent. So this is the concept of saturated solution. So you should know this. Now next factor, that is we are going to see factors affecting solubility. The very first factor which is affecting solubility is nature of solute and solvent. We have seen this law that like dissolves like. NaCl in water. Now you all know polar solvents always dissolve in polar solutes. And non-polar solvents, they dissolve non-polar solutes. Now here if you say NaCl is polar and water is also polar. NaCl has dipole, we have seen this in 11th standard, that is Na plus and Cl minus, it is polar. So also water, H2O, H plus and OH minus, it is again polar. So like dissolves like. What actually happens here is hydrogen bonding. Hydrogen bonding takes place between positively charged Na plus and negatively charged OH minus of water. So hydrogen bonding will take place like dissolves like, and we all know that NaCl is soluble in water. Next is cholesterol in benzene. You all know that oil cannot dissolve in water. Why this is so? Because water is polar whereas fats are non-polar. Same way, cholesterol, it cannot dissolve in water, but it is soluble in benzene. So you should know this like dissolves like. Next factor is effect of temperature on solubility. Effect of temperature on solubility, in this I'll give you 2 examples. The very first example is KCl, that is potassium chloride in water. Now potassium chloride, when you dissolve in water, what actually takes place is, it is this process or this reaction is an endothermic reaction or endothermic process takes place. Means what? Absorption of heat. As absorption of heat takes place, absorption means heat energy is taken in. Addition of heat takes place. And you all know wherever addition of heat takes place, temperature will increase. So as addition of heat takes place, temperature increases, so solubility will also increase. So here, remember, in case of KCl in water, that is potassium chloride, when it is added in water, endothermic reaction takes place. Endothermic means what? Heat energy is taken in, absorption of heat takes place. Because of addition of heat, temperature is increased and this favors solubility. Now this is first case. But if you see another case, that is calcium chloride when it is dissolved in water. Calcium chloride in water, heat energy is given out. Exo, always remember, exo means energy is given out and endo means energy is taken in. So in case of exothermic process, heat energy here is given out, and as a result of this, solubility decreases. See, pay attention here, solubility decreases with an increase of temperature. Just the reverse of the above we can see. As here in case of exothermic process, the temperature is reduced, and because of the reduction in temperature, we see that solubility is favored. But if you go ahead and if you increase the temperature, calcium chloride cannot dissolve in water because it is an exothermic process. Now next we are going to see an important law, which is effect of pressure on solubility. Now always remember one thing, solubility of gases increase with increasing pressure. As pressure increases, solubility will also increase. So the statement of Henry's law, please mark it as important because this is frequently asked and you all require this. Those who are studying for your entrance exam, so you will require this. Solubility of a gas in liquid is directly proportional to the pressure of the gas over the solution. So in short, solubility is directly proportional to pressure. Solubility is directly proportional to pressure. S is nothing but solubility and P is pressure. So you all know that solubility is denoted, or its unit is moles per liter. It is expressed in moles per liter. What is actual solubility? It is nothing but the concentration of the solute, or how much solute is dissolved in your solvent. So solubility is directly proportional to pressure. So here if you see on the screen, S is equal to KH into P. KH is nothing but proportionality constant, which is also called as solubility constant. So S is equal to KH into P, and if you go further ahead, KH is equal to S upon T. What is S? S is expressed in moles per liter and pressure is expressed in bars. So KH, the unit of KH you can say that is moles per liter per bar. Now let's go ahead to the next point. So till now we have seen effect of temperature on solubility, effect of pressure on solubility. We have seen Henry's law, and now we are coming towards an important point, that is vapor pressure of solutions of liquids in liquids. Vapor pressure of solutions of liquids in liquids. Now this is best explained by Raoult's law. Now Raoult's law states that, if you read the statement, let's read the statement. Partial vapor pressure of any volatile component of a solution is equal to the vapor pressure of pure component multiplied by its mole fraction in the solution. I'll repeat again. Partial vapor pressure of any volatile component of a solution is equal to the vapor pressure of the pure component multiplied by its mole fraction in the solution. Now if you just read this statement, you can't understand this. So I've just simplified it in point wise so that you can understand it. So I'll repeat the statement again. Pay attention. Partial vapor pressure of any volatile component in a solution is equal to the vapor pressure of the pure component multiplied by its mole fraction in the solution. So you all know what is partial vapor pressure, what are pure components, and what is mole fraction. We have seen this in 11. Now let's see what relation it has with Raoult's law. Now if you see on the screen, see I've made this small tabular form for you all. Volatile liquids, let's consider two volatile liquids, A1 and A2. These two are volatile. You all know what are volatile liquids. So A1 and A2 are volatile liquids, and they have partial vapor pressure P1 and P2. So we have two volatile liquids, A1 and A2, and their partial vapor pressures is P1 and P2. Mole fractions of corresponding volatile liquids is X1 and X2. If you see here, X1 is the mole fraction of A1, which is the first volatile liquid, and X2 is the mole fraction of A2, which is the second volatile liquid. And vapor pressure of pure liquids is P01 and P02. Always remember that partial vapor pressure is denoted as P1 and P2, whereas partial vapor pressure of pure components is always denoted as P01. Nod is the notation for pure components. Whenever you have to go for pure components, you have to give a nod notation. So P1 nod and P2 nod. Now let's come back to what our statement says. Partial vapor pressure of any volatile component of a solution is equal to the vapor pressure of pure component multiplied by its mole fraction in the solution. If you go according to Raoult's law. So partial vapor pressure. What is partial vapor pressure here? P1. If you see on the screen, according to Raoult's law, just go below that. We have partial vapor pressure P1, which is equal to just the statement we are going to write here so that you can understand and you can memorize this statement properly. Partial vapor pressure, which is equal to what? It is the product. Product of what? Vapor pressure of pure liquids, that is P01, and the mole fraction, that is X1. So when we are giving this notation for the first one, we have P1 is equal to X1 P01 and P2 is equal to X2 P02. But according to Dalton's law of partial pressures, we have seen this in 11th. What Dalton's law of partial pressure is that the total pressure is equal to the sum of the partial pressures. So partial pressures are P1 and P2 and total pressure is P. So partial pressure, that is total pressure P, which is equal to the sum of the two pressures or partial pressures P1 and P2. So let's go ahead. We have P1 is equal to X1 P01 plus X2 P02, which is now pay attention here, but x1 plus x2 is equal to 1. Now what is x1 plus x2? We all know x1 and x2 are mole fractions, and we have already seen that x1 and x2, which are mole fractions, the sum of two mole fractions is equal to 1. Always remember x1 plus x2 is equal to 1. Therefore, we have x1 is equal to 1 minus x2. Now just mathematically, if you solve this, you will get it, which is equal to 1 minus x2 into p naught 1 plus x2 into p naught 2. So what we get here? P naught 1 plus P naught, when you open the bracket, you get this way. You have to solve it. Solve once again so that you will understand. P naught 1 plus into bracket P naught 2 minus P naught 1 into x2. Again, I want to tell you what this law states, that partial vapor pressure of any volatile component of a solution is equal to the vapor pressure of the pure component multiplied by its mole fraction in the solution. So always remember this, partial vapor pressure of any volatile component, that is P1, is equal to x1 into P1 naught. So let's go ahead to the next slide so that we can understand this. Now we are going to see ideal and non-ideal solutions. What are ideal solutions and what are non-ideal solutions? Here we are going to see ideal solutions, they obey Raoult's law over an entire range of concentrations. So also, no heat is evolved or absorbed when two components forming an ideal solution are mixed. That is, enthalpy of mixing is 0. What enthalpy of mixing is 0 means what? Something should happen when you mix the solution. Either heat energy is given out or heat energy is taken in. But here in case of ideal solutions, no heat is taken in or no heat is given out. So enthalpy of mixing is 0. The next thing, if you see here, is the change in volume is also 0. That is, delta V is equal to 0. When you add the solutions, either the volume should increase or the volume should decrease. But in case of ideal solutions, the volume is neither increased nor decreased. So change in volume, that is delta V of mixture, is 0. So first point we have seen that they obey Raoult's law. Next point we have seen that the change in enthalpy is 0. That is, neither heat is given out or heat is neither taken in. The second thing we have seen is change in volume is equal to 0. And now the third point is they are very, very uncommon. Very rare to find. Very uncommon. Hardly you get to see any ideal solution. So the best example is benzene and toluene. Benzene and toluene, they form an example of ideal solution. Actually, they are not ideal solutions, but they are very nearer to the ideal solution. Benzene and toluene, if you mix together, they are near, this mixture is approximately an ideal solution, because ideal solutions, perfectly ideal solutions, are very, very, very rare to find. So therefore, ideal solutions, I'll repeat again. First point, you should remember that they obey Raoult's law. Second point, you should remember that enthalpy of mixing, always remember enthalpy is denoted by H, capital H. So change in enthalpy, therefore we are going to see it as delta H. So delta H is equal to 0. No change in volume, therefore delta V of mixing is also 0. And they are very, very uncommon. Perfectly, you can say that perfectly ideal solutions are very uncommon. An example is benzene and toluene. Now we are coming towards non-ideal solutions. Non-ideal solutions means those solutions that do not obey Raoult's law over an entire range of concentrations. They don't obey Raoult's law. Raoult's law we have just seen, and non-ideal solutions, they do not obey Raoult's law over an entire range of concentration. Next thing is vapor pressure of these solutions, they can be higher or lower than those of the pure components. Now, which are non-ideal solutions? All those solutions that we have seen in those 9 examples, or any solution other than the ideal solution, can be an example of non-ideal solution. Non-ideal solutions are very common. So just the opposite, or you can distinguish between them very easily, ideal and non-ideal solutions. So I'll repeat again. Ideal solutions, they obey Raoult's law. Enthalpy of mixing, delta H is equal to 0. No change in volume, therefore delta V of mixture is 0. Thirdly, they are uncommon. Example is benzene and toluene. Whereas here, in case of non-ideal solutions, they do not obey Raoult's law. And secondly, vapor pressure of these solutions are higher or lower than those of the pure components, and they are very common. Now we are going to see those examples which give a positive deviation from Raoult's law and some which give a negative deviation from Raoult's law. Now pay attention here. We are also going to see graphs related to this. So first I'll give you an example so that you can easily understand the graph. First we will see those examples or those solutions which give a positive deviation from Raoult's law. Now those which give a positive deviation, you can see on the screen, it occurs in solutions in which solute-solvent intermolecular attractions are weaker than those between solute-solute molecules and solvent-solvent molecules. I'll first read this, understand it. As you see the graph, you will get it very clearly. Vapor pressure of such solutions are higher than those of pure components. I'll read it, you understand. As I'll show you the graph, you will immediately understand what I am teaching. Ethanol and acetone is an example of this. I'll repeat again. In case of positive deviation from Raoult's law, it occurs in solutions in which solute-solvent intermolecular attractions are weaker than those between solute-solute molecules and solvent-solvent molecules. Vapor pressure of such solutions are higher than those of pure components. For example, ethanol and acetone. The next is negative deviation from Raoult's law. So in case of negative deviation from Raoult's law, it occurs in solutions in which the interactions between solvent and solute molecules are stronger than those between solvent-solvent and solute-solute interactions. So vapor pressure of such solutions are lower than that of pure components. So example is phenol and aniline, or also chloroform and acetone. I'll now show you the graph so that you can understand. See now, this is negative deviation from Raoult's law. The second that we have seen, negative deviations from Raoult's law. See properly. I am repeating the statement again. You can see now, if P1 and P2, see those curves, that is P1 and P2, and see the dip in the curve. You can see the above vapor pressure of solution. It is dipping, it is down. Actually, this is a three-dimensional process. But if you see that it is dipping down, so vapor pressure of such solutions are lower than those of pure components. If you have a graph of vapor pressure versus mole fraction, you can see that P1 and P2 are the vapor pressure of pure components or of the individual components. P1 and P2 are the vapor pressure curves of individual components, and vapor pressure of the solution, if you see the above curve or the upward curve which is dropping down, so this gives a negative deviation. So it shows a negative deviation from Raoult's law. So this is very important, and you better practice this graph at home, because positive deviation and negative deviation, these are important concepts. And now we'll see what actually positive deviation from Raoult's law is. We'll see the next graph. If you see positive deviation from Raoult's law, now see, this is positive deviation, just the opposite. I'll repeat again. Now you would have understood the statement that it occurs in solutions in which solute-solvent intermolecular attractions are weaker than those between solute-solute molecules and solvent-solvent molecules. That is, now pay attention towards the graph, vapor pressure of such solutions are higher than those of pure components, ethanol and acetone. Now see, vapor pressure of solution. If you see the above, the very top graph or the very top curve, if you see, it is pointing upwards. So it shows that this gives a positive deviation from Raoult's law. So we have seen negative deviation from Raoult's law. We have also seen positive deviation from Raoult's law. And now we are going to see what the next slide, which is very important, the 4 points we are going to see in this. I'll just give you an introduction for you all to have a feel of this. The second half of the chapter, what we can say, that is colligative properties. Now what actually colligative properties are? Colligative means collective. Now pay attention. Colligative means collective, that is coming together. Now colligative properties are those properties, it is a physical property and it depends upon the number and not on the nature. It depends upon the number of solute particles and not on the nature of solute particles. If you see here, there are 4 colligative properties. The very first colligative property is lowering of vapor pressure. The next colligative property is elevation in boiling point. Then we have depression in freezing point, and then we have osmotic pressure. Now, for your understanding, I am telling you, please prepare all 4 colligative properties properly because they are very important. Now, in this colligative property, we are going to see each and every colligative property properly. That is vapor pressure, what actually vapor pressure is, what is lowering of vapor pressure, how vapor pressure is lowered when a non-volatile solute is added to it. Secondly, we are going to see what actually boiling point is, how boiling point is increased when a non-volatile solute is added to it. So also we are going to see freezing point, how freezing point is depressed or lowered when a non-volatile solute is added to it, and we are also going to see osmotic pressure and osmosis. This is very important and very interesting. The second half chapter what we can see. So see that you all study properly, stay home,